What's up top 10 fam, hope you're having an awesome day. I'm your host Ayman Hasan and welcome back to another video. The stories and sightings during witching hour are back, people. Apparently you guys would never want to see a ghost at 3 AM yourself, but you're totally cool with hearing about other people's harrowing 3 AM experiences, so let's just jump right in. These are the top 10 scary ghosts only seen at 3 AM part 2. Starting off with number 10 is the figure. This one comes from Johnny, and no, not Johnny from Top 10 Nerd, just regular other Johnny. He said when he was 14 he lived in this house that had an attic which would always quietly creak. No one ever went up there since it was always locked, and it was filled with just random ancient stuff anyway, so no one was even bothered either. One night Johnny's parents were out of town and his friend Cameron slept over. They played video games, ordered pizza, watched TV, etc. and stayed up late. You know how little boys do. But by 3 AM they heard what they thought were footsteps in the attic. Scared to death but also too nervous to check it out, they just convinced themselves it was the oldness and distracted themselves by watching TV. 2 minutes later they heard a huge slam and the sound of shattering glass in the kitchen, so they ran in there to find nothing. Nothing was broken, nothing was out of place, it was just the strangest thing. 10 minutes later they heard super loud footsteps in the attic and thought, okay, now we have to check it out. So they got a flashlight and walked towards the attic stairs, and as they pointed it up towards the top of the stairs, they went pale. At the top of the stairs was a tall black figure that was about 8 feet tall. They just stood there watching them and grinning at them, and then it just disappeared into thin air. The boys called the police and they found no traces of anyone in the house. But that could have easily been like Slenderman's brother or cousin, I swear to God. Coming in at number 9 is the lady in the pink dress. Always a lady, and I'm pleasantly surprised she's in a pink dress this time, not a white one. Shared by Reddit user TwistedSTL636, they said they had a huge Catholic family and this story happened to them in the 80s. There was a huge party at the user's grandma's house, and his great grandma lived with her grandma as she had dementia and so she needed the care. A bunch of aunts and uncles were cleaning the house after the party and the great grandma went to her room. At about 3 AM she came out and she said, "There's a man outside my window." The group go to her room, look out the window and find no one. Outside the window was just a bench, and so blaming it on her dementia, the group told her to go back to sleep. She came out literally a second later again saying, "There's a man at my window," and again the same thing happened. They went to the window, checked, there was no one there. They finally asked her what she was seeing and she said he wanted her to come outside and meet the pretty lady on the bench wearing the pink dress. At this point they went out and actually searched outside and found nothing, so one of the aunts actually ended up sleeping next to the great grandma, you know, for supervision purposes. The next day the user's grandma gets a call saying the great grandma's sister died the night before. The grandma asked some questions, you know, like what happened, was she sick, etc. And the family replied saying, "We don't know, but she definitely saw it coming since she fell asleep in bed wearing her favorite pink dress." At number 8 we have the eyeless boy. This one's from an anonymous guy who shared that when he was 10 years old he woke up in bed at around 3 AM to the sound of someone coming into his room and sitting on the edge of his bed. He assumed it was his mum, but when he opened his eyes, a boy without eyes was just sitting there. Black holes for sockets, just straight up sitting there. They stared at each other for a while and then the guy blinked and the boy was gone. 5 years later his girlfriend came over to do some work and she slept over that night. Again at around 3 AM she suddenly sat up, pointed to the corner of the ceiling and then went back to sleep. When he finally got her awake she said, "On the wall I saw a little boy with no eyes. He was there in a Spider-Man pose just staring at me." And remembering the boy he had seen 5 years prior, he freaked out and told her the story. Now fast forward another 5 years and at this point he has a 2-year-old kid with the same girlfriend. They were living in his old house and his daughter started waking up at 3 AM every night and talking. But she'd say the same thing every single night, and one night the guy just playfully asked her, you know, like, "Who are you talking to?" And she said, "It's a little boy, he's nice, he's lost and looking for his mommy." And honestly I didn't even feel bad for the ghost kid until that, like that's so sad. That broke my heart. Either way the daughter kept seeing the little boy every night till the family eventually moved house, so there's that. But I wonder what happened to his eyes though, that's a bit That's a bit sus. Filling our number 7 slot is the neighbor. This was from Redditor Racing Barracarts, who said their neighbor died a month ago, and after she died, really weird things started happening in the user's house and her other neighbors' houses. The user started hearing shuffling up and down her hallway at 3 AM, and she assumed it was always her roommate, but then she found out that her roommate worked overnight, so he was never even home at that time. The roommate moved out and things went even more downhill. The user started hearing a knocking at her front door every night at 3 AM. She'd check outside and no one would be there, so initially she just thought she was being ding-dong ditched until one time. And yes, we've all ding-dong ditched, let's face it, let's admit it right now. This one time, the knock came, she went to check, no one was there, and as she was closing the door, the knock came back again, and the door was partially open, so she knew for sure there was no one outside. After that, the user would sleep 2 hours a night max because she was so scared. Other things started happening, like her windows would slide open, her drawers would close by themselves. Months later, her and her fiance were about to go to bed when they saw a shadow figure run into the room, into their closet. A few minutes later, it came outside and lay in between them and said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" As clear as day. Now the ghosts and the occurrences aren't the neighbor who died, but they all did start because she died. Now all the users' neighbors claim the knocking happened to them too, but as old grandmas, they all just dismissed it as ding-dong ditching, which it's not. Now at number 6 is Bill. This one's from Reddit user CallMeBlue213, who said 6 years ago he was visiting some family in Alaska. He borrowed a car to drive there and ended up losing control and hitting a tree. It was absolutely freezing and there was no point staying in the car any longer, as it was 3 AM now and the windows were smashed, so it wasn't even warm inside. He went outside and saw some headlights coming his way and flagged the car down. It ended up being a trucker named Bill, who thankfully dropped the user off at a small town 10 miles ahead. When the user got off, he said his thank yous and his byes to Bill and then went into a little restaurant to eat. He told the waitress that a trucker named Bill had helped him, and she said that was impossible, since only one trucker drove down that road called Bill and he had died 6 years before that. Chills went up his spine, goosebumps covered him completely. The waitress even described Bill for the user and the descriptions matched completely. Good guy Bill. Honestly, I don't mind ghosts at all when they're nice and helpful like this, but when they're mean and possessing you, it's just like, no, there's no need for that, man, like stop. Coming in at number 5 is the motion detector. This one comes from Daniela, who said there are motion detectors all over her family house. For a solid 3-month period, Daniela lived alone in her house while her dad lived with his girlfriend. One night she was sleeping at the girlfriend's house and at around 3 AM the burglar alarm went off at her own house. The police informed them the motion detector had gone off in Daniela's dad's room even though no one was there. Her dad assumed it was broken and had the whole system replaced, but the same thing happened a few days later at the same time. He replaced it again and it happened again, and after that point they just gave up. Each time it went off at 3 AM and no one would be present in the room, and Daniela was 100% sure it was a spirit of her mum who had passed away when she was younger, because according to her, she's haunting them because everyone they knew hated her dad's new girlfriend, so it was probably like a warning sign or something. At number 4 are the eyes. This one comes from Lily, who said that when she was around 4 or 5 years old, quite scared of the dark, so she'd sleep in between her parents. Her parents' bed was right in front of the bathroom door, and one night she woke up at 3 AM and just couldn't get back to sleep. Now she sat up and looked into the bathroom and saw a huge pair of red and orange glowing eyes staring back at her, almost burning a hole in her because of how laser focused they were. Lily tried waking up her parents, but they just wouldn't wake up. She started freaking out when she heard a woman's voice calling out to her from the bathroom. She assumed the nice voice belonged to the ugly eyes, and although she doesn't remember what it said, they were motherly things. Either way, she was horrified, and the next day she told her parents what had happened, and they told her it was a nightmare. Of course they did. Of course they said that. Honestly, I feel like it could have been like the ghost of a scorned mother who lost her own child and was trying to like abduct Lily maybe. Like it was saying motherly things, it was staring holes through her, like what else could it have been? Do you guys have any thoughts? Let me know. Filling our number 3 slot is the melody. This story is from Roy, who said he was playing on the trampoline with his friend Jay, and Jay was telling him how his sister sometimes hears their grandparents' piano play by itself when she's home alone. Mind you, they were hanging out at Jay's grandparents' house that day, and so Roy was like, that's bullshit. and didn't believe him. Later on, Roy went in to get his iPad, and as he was making his way downstairs to the front door, he starts hearing the piano play. It wasn't just a random few notes. Roy was out here listening to some Fur Elisa like melody. He ran out of the house and found Jay's dad outside painting the house, not having heard He gave Jay the iPad and told him that he definitely believed him, and they went about their day. That night, Roy was sleeping over and everyone was asleep in the house when around 3 AM, Roy started hearing the piano play again. He wanted to see it in front of his eyes to really know it wasn't a hoax, so he made his way to the basement where the piano was. He opened the door and went inside and literally watched this piano play itself. The door behind him closed and then wouldn't open again, and Roy just stood there scared as hell watching this piano play. 5 minutes later, when the piano stopped, the door opened and he ran upstairs and cried. The only people who knew how to play the piano were Jay's grandma, who was dead, and his grandpa, who didn't live in that house. Jay told Roy how his grandma always wanted to play for him, but he was always too small and would run around and just not listen to her. Well, she sure as shit made Roy listen, didn't she? Just locked him in the basement there. Please don't lock it, grandma, that's a bit scary, isn't it? Just let him hear you play. Now at number 2 is Happy Birthday. This one's from Reddit user bhoppy20, who said right after he graduated college, he was staying with his girlfriend at her sister's house. They slept in the basement while everyone else slept in their own rooms, and at around 3 AM he gets woken up by the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs to the basement. Curious as to who would come down at that time, he opened his eyes to see a man with long dark hair sitting at the foot of his bed. Mans look like a moonlit anime character out here. Either way, he was shocked but also adult enough to assume he was just sleepy and seeing things, so he just went back to bed. The next morning he told his girlfriend about his dream and she freaked out and said, "Oh my god, we forgot to make a cake for my brother." Except she only had one sister. Apparently, years ago when she lived in Vietnam, her parents had miscarried her little brother, and so to honor him they would bake him a cake every year on his birthday. But the night before they'd forgotten to do so the whole family agreed the boyfriend must have seen the brother all grown up and sad about not getting his cake that year. The boyfriend was also pissed he had no idea about the brother to begin with, but that's a fight for another day. And finally, at number 1 is Slenderman 2.0. This one's from Redditor B4455, who said when she was 7 years old she shared a room with her youngest sister. One night their parents had put them to sleep, but she just couldn't fall asleep. Her sister was fast asleep while she was just staring at the ceiling. Story of my life, honestly, I do that all the time. Either way, after staring at the ceiling, then the walls, she looked at the clock and realized it was 3 AM. She decided to, really just close her eyes and try her best to fall asleep. Before she did, her eyes scanned the door and saw that someone was standing there. An enormously tall figure, as tall as the doorway itself. It had long arms and legs and had no facial features whatsoever. It was just glowing yellow, not moving, not talking. She hid under the covers because at that age that's the best protection you can think of, and when she looked out again it was still there. She did this twice more before screaming her lungs out. Her dad ran into the room straight through the figure and asked what was wrong. The figure had disappeared and she never ended up seeing it again, but the sighting scarred her so much she still can't sleep alone or with the lights fully off. Extremely tall, featureless, long-limbed man figure. That is most definitely Slenderman himself. Confirmed. It's him. He got into the house. He's out of the game. I'm kidding, I know he's real, I know it's not just a game. And that's it for today's video, guys. Ghost sightings always happen to kids more than adults, I feel, and that's probably because they're an easier target. But I mean, I feel like when you're invisible, anyone is an easy target. Let me know which story was your favorite below, and as always, I'm your host Ayman Hasan, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!